21st, 2024, and this is, as I already said, a public meeting of the Portland Committee on Community Engaged Policing. Next slide. And next slide. And let's get started with introductions. So I'll hand it over to one of our co-chairs for this meeting, Tia. And Tia, feel free to pass it on to your fellow members.
Okay, I'm just putting the screen back together. Here we go. Okay, my name is Tia Palafox. My pronouns are she, her. I've been a member since 2021, and I'm currently the co-chair of the Community Engagement Subcommittee. Odelia, can you go next?
Yeah. Hi, everyone. My name is Odelia Zuckerman. I use she, her pronouns, and I am the co-chair with Tia of the Community Engagement Subcommittee, and I'll pass it on to Ashley.
Yeah, Ashley Schofield. I like to use she, her pronouns. Been a PCCEP member since August 2022, and I am recently became the co-chair of the full PCCEP. Carrie, how about you?
Hi, my name's Carrie Driver. I use she, her pronouns too, and I've been a PCCEP member since September last year and recently joined the Community Engagement Subcommittee.
Oh,
Pass it on to Leslie.
Good evening, everyone. Leslie Martinez. My pronouns are she, her, and I am a PCCEP member. I've been serving as long as Ashley, and it's nice to see everyone. I will pass it on to, who else do I see from PCCEP?
Byron's here.
Byron?
Byron Vaughn with a B-Y-R-O-N, PCCEP member since 2021, co-chair of the Settlement and Policy. And I'll pass it on to Kip.
Thank you, Byron. Kip Silverman, he, him pronouns, the other co-chair of the Settlement and Policy Committee. And I'm on mobile, so I can't really tell who else is on the call, so I apologize.
I think that's all our PCCEP members, unless I missed anyone. Yeah, I think so for now. Yeah. So now we can move on to city staff, DOJ, PPB, anybody else. Feel free to just jump in. I'll start. I'm Dory Grabinski, PCCEP project manager.
Hi, everybody. Stephanie Howard. I work in the mayor's office. This is director of community safety.
Evening, folks. Mary Claire Buckley, Inspector General at the Portland Police Bureau.
Hi, everyone. Heidi Brown. I'm with the city attorney's office. I will be a lot off camera tonight because I'm still suffering from COVID, so my apologies.
Sarah Ames, she, her pronouns. I'm a deputy city attorney working with Heidi.
Hi, Samir Kanal, Advisory Boards and Commissions Manager for the Community Safety Division. Thanks.
Vanessa Alonso Leon. I'm one of the facilitators.
All right. Thanks for being here, everybody. And we can get slides again, please.
I will go ahead and read the community agreements tonight. And everyone else here tonight, please introduce yourself in the chat if you would like. Listen actively and respectfully. Share airtime. Be present and open to new information and perspectives. Assume positive intent. Respect each other. Respect the group. Speak your own truth. Communicate directly, honestly, and respectfully. Ask questions to clarify and call out bias. Be okay with ambiguity. The overview of tonight's meeting is we'll do updates at 6:05. Then we'll have a PP Portland Police Bureau Academy and ride-along discussion. with some special guests, and then we'll move on to Portland Street response. Next steps. Open public at 7:50, and then a wrap up. Thank you.
All right, so now just we have 2 updates. The first one is on the independent monitor hiring process, which there was just an update like I saw like 10 minutes ago. So this is very recent. Not sure.
Yeah, we have slides on that, so yep.
Yeah. Yeah, so there were 3 finalists just announced. And this is all like up on the city website too, as of today, I believe, with resumes and profiles. And then
And there's another, yep.
yeah. And so there's gonna be on March 12th a community forum where the finalists will participate and be present. I don't know if Sarah or Stephanie, if one of you wants to give like a further update on this, if that would be useful.
Yeah, I'm happy to. I think there's not a whole lot more to say at this point because we're still in the process, but I do want to give a big thanks to Byron for his work on this on behalf of PCCEP so far, in reviewing applications and sitting in on the first round of interviews. So, and providing really valuable feedback. So big ups to him, and we appreciate him and all of you. I would just encourage everyone to click on those links. I emailed them. Sorry, it was just announced this afternoon. But I encourage everyone to check out the resumes and the profiles, and we will, as we say here, we'll have a community forum where we will have the community engage directly with these candidates and ask questions. We are also happy to receive feedback through an email address that's also in the announcement from anyone in the community that has thoughts about those candidates. So I think with that, because we're still in the process, there's not a whole lot more that we can say in detail, but we're eager for everyone's feedback now that we have narrowed the field to these 3.
Awesome, thank you. And then Byron, I don't know if you wanted to add anything, but if you do, can jump in here, share anything.
Not at this time. I appreciate the area to do this. If I did have anything, I will wait until after the process is done and the person is hired in the form of everything. So I don't want to be in any influence of anything right now. So I'll just keep my comments to myself.
All right, cool. Okay, so our second update is just on the PAC code, the Police Accountability Commission code package and the future police oversight system. And I think this is still in like the hands of the city, so it hasn't gone over to the DOJ yet. But if Sarah, if you could provide an update on this if possible, or if anyone else could, that would be great. Or Heidi, I see you on
Yeah, thanks. Thank you. Yeah, unfortunately, we don't have a lot to update except the process is continuing and we're hoping to get to something with DOJ and with our union folks. And then also we have taken into serious consideration the recommendations we got in December and from all the public and are incorporating that into our conversations. So thank you everyone who participated and provided feedback. It really was very helpful.
Awesome, thank you. And do you know if there's any like timeline to be aware of on that, or it's just?
There isn't a deadline on getting to agreement on it, but I can tell you that we have been focused on it and trying to get things moving as quickly as we can. I know there's a lot of interest in that and a lot of interest from council in standing up the new board and getting them started. So there's definitely interest in expediting this.
Cool, thank you.
There's
oh,
a,
yeah, go ahead, Dory.
Oh, I just put this in the chat. But if there are any questions from PCCEP or community members about either of the updates, please feel free to ask your questions.
I see Dan has one.
I'm trying to remember, and I'm sorry, I'm a little still brain fuddled from my illness, but I believe there was a public records request for the comments. They were, but I'm not 100% sure. So if folks want them, they can make one. Sarah, I see you came off. Oh, you're muted still.
Gotta do my camera and my microphone. Yes, there was a public records request that we fulfilled, or I believe, a little while ago, for the comments that came in.
Feel free to raise your hand if you have any comments or questions. I'll get you. Dan, go ahead.
I'm just kind of getting technically oriented here. Dan Handelman, he, him, Portland Complex. Well, thanks for saying that somebody requested those comments and that they were released to whoever that person is. I guess my question is the city going to publish them? Because there's been other public records requests where the city just put them on a website so people can look at them without having to find out who made the request and track them down to get a copy. So is it possible that you can publish those somewhere so that community can see them?
Yeah, let us take a look at them, Dan, but I see no reason why we couldn't do that. We've released them already, and we can look at trying to put them on trending topics or somewhere where they'd be accessible. So yeah, that should not be a problem.
Great. Any other comments or questions? I don't see any. I'll turn it back over to the co-chairs.
Yeah, I think that was all for some updates. So I'll turn it over to Tia now.
Sorry, I'm reading a message I have. Can we do the PSR?
Yeah, so I think our guests for the next agenda item aren't quite here yet. We're scheduled for just a little later, and we kind of breezed through this opening portion, which is great. So I think we can jump ahead, kind of skip around in our agenda tonight. So I think we can devote a couple minutes here to this piece, and kind of advance this, and then wait for our guests to arrive. So yeah, I think Ashley, maybe a good place, sorry to bring you in out of nowhere, but I think maybe a good place to start with this one is if you could share any of the information that you as full committee co-chair learned in your recent meeting with the mayor, or any thoughts that you and Celeste had on this subject, and then bringing it back into this subcommittee.
Sorry, what was the question? Sorry.
So I guess thinking about this subcommittee's potential next steps on PSR, maybe a good place to start there would be a little bit of a debrief about yours and Celeste's recent meeting with Mayor Wheeler and some of the questions that you asked, any insights that you gained. Might be some good footing, a good space to sort of start to debrief some of that conversation.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, Celeste isn't here, right? Okay. Yeah, so Celeste and I met with Stephanie and Mayor Wheeler a couple weeks ago, like Dory mentioned, and you know, our agenda items were to discuss sort of PSR steps, particularly around the budget and thinking about how we can partner there. What I took away from that meeting is that the mayor is very, very supportive of the program. You know, I think he always has. I I think he is, you know, also questioning fire and rescue's budget. And so you know, I walked away like that he's going to use the rest of his time as mayor to make sure that you know, that is protected and you know, but we didn't talk about details. We didn't talk about sorry, we didn't talk about details in certain terms of like what that would look like or what kind of support that would look like. But I think I just walked away kind of a little more reassured that, you know, because the mayor, right, he has the final say of the budget, and that will come, and so it'll be referred to council around May. So I think we just need to keep keep that like connection going on. And I think if we wanted to move forward with our own recommendation as what PCCEP can do in our own, you know, our provocative there, you know, I would suggest maybe thinking about, you know, if this space we wanted to do, you know, I don't know, there's throwing ideas out there, but is this another space to have another town hall? You know, we've already done that. But if we did want to do a recommendation, I think we'd probably want to wait until we hear about the budget, you know, the final budget. And so I just think, you know, it's hard because PCCEP, I think this program PSR is very important to sort of why we're here and very much part of the settlement history. But you know, I think we're you know, this is budget territory where this is a council, this is the mayor, these are things they vote on. So I think something that I think we've talked about in the past is just keeping the community aware of when those opportunities are to tap in and to you know, be able to do more testimony. And so maybe as that gets closer, we have opportunities within this space and maybe the full PCCEP meeting to have a forum. But I think at the moment, while that budget felt a little bit jarring, you know, I don't know, we didn't talk about it in this space, but I watched the budget work session. And it just felt jarring because everything that was being cut was PSR. And so, you know, we brought that to Mayor Wheeler, and I think, you know, I think we're all on the same page there of like PSR needs to be protected and supported. And but I think those details are still in the mayor's lap. Looks like there's some Byron, what's your thoughts?
Yes, the budget. From what you could tell in the meeting, thank you, Ashley.
Yeah.
So I'm trying to stay along with what you're saying. There is a budget, there isn't a budget, or he's laying out a budget.
Yeah, so he, you know, this is how, yeah, so
Okay.
so that work session that Fire and Rescue had was just one of many that he has with all the other bureaus or work sessions. And it, you know, all the bureaus bring their presentation, and then the mayor and his council take it back, and he proposes a budget, and then it's voted on. It's kind of the protocol. So yeah,
My last question was there any time to ask him if he was in Renee Gonzalez's ear on in the sense of, you know, hey, kind of champion this?
Yeah, we didn't talk about those politics, because I think those are politics, you know. What I will say is Mayor Wheeler, you know, I got a firm messaging from him that he's going to take, you know, he wants to use the rest of his political capital as mayor the rest of the year to make sure that, you know, we're driving some solutions around PSR, and budget is one thing that he can control. Essentially, he's the one thing he can propose. So no, we didn't talk about that. I think, you know, but politically, I think Mayor Wheeler, yeah, he's willing to put himself on the line for it. And so I don't know, maybe there's a step where he comes back to this space and I don't know, says that out loud to everybody. But again, you know, he is a mayor who is leaving, and you know, at the end of the year. But that's what he said, you know, what he has is the budget, like to set it, it's, you know, set it in motion for the next year. And but yeah, we didn't get details on like how he was going to do that, because, you know, that's what he's working on right now. Yeah.
Thanks, Ashley. Do we have any other members before we go to the public for questions or comments? Okay, seeing none. Go ahead, Dr. Allen. And you're on mute if you're trying to ask your question. Go ahead.
Okay, so are you saying that the mayor didn't put PSR in Gonzalez's space in the first place? Didn't the mayor put it there? Didn't they put it into the fire department in the first place?
Yeah, because I think the council member that championed it was in the Fire and Rescue Bureau at the time, Commissioner Hardesty. So that's my understanding. I'm only answering as perspective of a voter myself.
Yeah, and Stephanie can also help Ashley.
Yeah, sure. Maybe Stephanie. That makes more sense.
Yeah. No, so as Ashley said, Portland Street Response was started in the Fire Bureau with under Commissioner Hardesty's leadership as the commissioner of the Fire Bureau. It remains part of the Bureau right now. And so when Commissioner Gonzalez took over, he was assigned the Fire Bureau. So but that is all to say the budget discussion is a more holistic, across city bureaus discussion.
You can see it how you like to see it, but if I get a chance to say something, then I'm going to take it now. And that is that there doesn't appear to be enough space in the world for Commissioner Gonzalez and the fire chief and PSR to be in the same place. They've made it very clear they don't want any part of it. Just look at the audit report. And no matter how much money they give the Fire Bureau, they're going to take all of it. They're not going to give it to PSR. So is there any other discussion possible about getting PSR out of the Fire Bureau?
There are many discussions going on right now amid a lot of transformation and everything. So I absolutely take your point, and I hear that feedback. But yes, I can confirm there are absolutely conversations about what is the best way to fortify this program among all of council at City Hall.
I just want to quickly chime in as a reminder that this conversation is grounded in the idea of PCCEP's next steps, right? So it's really super helpful to know about conversations happening at the city and with the mayor and council, but also PCCEP as a group acts independently and can make recommendations or do community engagement based on the input that they hear from you. And that is, where I think this conversation is grounded is PCCEP's next steps around the things that they're hearing from all of you. So just wanted to remind everyone of that.
Thanks, Dory, and thanks, Stephanie. Tia, and then we'll go to Barb.
My question is, Ashley, is there anything else that PCCEP can do or is planning on doing?
Regarding PSR and the combo with the mayor?
Yes, I'm still sticking with that. Thank you.
Yeah, so like I said, I don't think, we didn't drill into any details about what that partnership would look like. I think because it's in this budget phase, like Stephanie said, there, the budget season is a, it's always swirling, it's always going around. And so it's mayor is, as all the mayors do, they, hear all the details and then they take their assessment. And so while we didn't drill into what PCCEP could do, I heard loud and clear, and I think Celeste would say the same thing, that the mayor feels very passionate about, protecting PSR. I don't know if passionate is the right word, but just very strongly about it and wants to use the political capital he has as mayor currently to support it. So I took that as, we'll see that in the budget. Now that's something we'll see closer to April or May. And so I think, this is something we talked about with the mayor or Stephanie necessarily, but I think we've internally talked about, I think Celeste and I kind of talked about it, is we can be, conveyors of information and create more forums as we get closer to budgets being determined. If anything comes out of that, and we'll we can give as much updates as we can, but I think that information is very much open to the public, and I think we could absolutely add it into our list of hey, heads up, there's this work session with PSR in it, but that's kind of all always open to public to watch and to add feedback to. So I think it's just right now PCCEP as we are as most of our action items are, is being informers and creating places to convene, to get input on from community. So I see that happening, later in the spring, and that being where we would come in. Does that make sense?
Thank you. Tia, do you have a follow-up or?
No.
Okay, great. Let's go to Barb and then Barbara.
Hi. I wish I had all of my words, but I don't. So I think Dan Handelman can probably help me in the chat. PCCEP has already given a recommendation that included PSR basically as at the top. And I just can't remember the name of there were a bunch of P's in it. But so I would like you guys to consider adding that to your recommendation, just the reminder that there already has been a recommendation, I think might be really nice. And then I guess what else I have to say is, as far as the budget stuff goes, there's usually like, well, Stephanie can tell me, there's usually like 3 open meetings, right, around the budget while they're working on the budget open, but they have the open public meetings where people can go en masse or by themselves and say what they think the budget should be spent on.
That's exactly right, Barb. And the work session where the budget was discussed around fire, that's preliminary. So every service area will present their, where they think they are in the budget cycle preliminarily, and then there will be public meetings where we can get feedback on the proposed budget. I'll send those dates. I think they're in early April, so I'll find those and I'll drop them in the chat. The logistics, I think, are still being worked out, but I will make sure that you all have that information so that you can attend if you'd like to. And all of that, I mean, the vote for the budget, I don't think it happens until May. So it's very early technically in the budget cycle. But yeah, there's a lot of opportunity to provide feedback as this sort of develops. But I do just want to sort of say that, I think PCCEP has been really helpful in the conversations that I've had with the mayor and the conversations that are happening around City Hall. And I think your interest and your support, along with the broader community support of Portland Street Response, is very, very well understood and felt. So, please continue to share all of your feedback in any way that you would like to. And I'll do everything I can to make sure you know of all the opportunities to do it.
Thank you, Stephanie. Barbara?
Barbara Buczynski, Portland Cop Watch. I appreciate that Mayor Wheeler is saying that he's all in favor of PSR, but I think that he needs to express that by really pushing on getting some money for PSR. PSR is pretty well worked out. They don't need advice or anything. They need money. So, and I hope that PCCEP doesn't wait until the budget's a done deal and then try to scramble for getting them money. I think pressure needs to be put right now, and I hope that PCCEP does that and uses whatever power they have to press City Council or somebody for money to be put in the budget now rather than waiting till May or whenever it is. Thank you. Appreciate your work.
Thank you, Barbara.
I see our guests are here.
And
So
I just wanted to, if you don't mind, I just wanted to comment with, I think it's in terms of just, finishing up that convo and PSR and PCCEP's ability to stay, sort of ahead of it for the community. I totally hear you, Barbara, about money. And again, the mayor was very supportive, but, I did note there wasn't like a lot of details about what that support would look like. And I took it, I kind of took it as an assumption of like, he, because he's got the hand on the budget. So You know, as always, you know, email your counselor, email the commission, you know, email the mayor, like let it, you know, you can always do that. You can do it every day, like, you know, and tell your friends to do it. I think PCCEP, you know, we have influence and we have some arm, but you know, the community has much more. And I think we've spoken it loud and clear. So I think for those that are nervous about Gonzalez and the Bureau and the budget, you know, I think it would be a, I mean, I don't know, an outgoing mayor, right? Like he's got nothing to lose. So I think he can put a little political weight around where he puts money for a PSR. I think for PCCEP, I think we've got sort of a recommendation teed up. So maybe next step, and Kip, you know, I want to give you the kudos there because you're the one who really put that together for us. And you know, it's kind of been on our back burner to see what we want to do with it. But maybe a next session could be, you know, maybe some more information gathering to get to recommendation, to get to the mayor like early April, right? Before he has to vote on in May. So get him in that space where we have that kind of influence to get an answer from them. So that would be my suggestion. I know Kip and I have talked a little bit about it, but yeah, that's, you know, sort of in terms of next steps from a PCCEP.
Thanks, Ashley. Barbara, did you have your hand up? Did you have something
Oh,
else?
sorry.
All right, let's go to Kip.
Yeah, I just wanted to piggyback on what Ashley said and what I've said in chat. We definitely have some thoughts about how to drive this from the PCCEP side of things, and there's lots of conversations going on, but the thing that really helps us is please submit your feedback and suggestions and support through our email address, which is, again, I'm sorry, I'm on mobile, otherwise I'd share it out. But having this input in writing as well as in these conversations is super helpful for us getting community backing for helping to drive the conversation. That's all I wanted to say. So thank you.
Thanks, Kip. Appreciate that recommendation, that reminder to folks, and I think several people have mentioned it as well. So since I don't see any other hands up, we'll go ahead and transition back, and I'll turn it over to Tia to introduce our next guest.
Okay, wonderful. Thank you. We are going to be discussing next the Portland Police Bureau Community Academy and ride-alongs, and we have special guest here, Officer Natasha Hansberger, who's the PPB Community Engagement Leader, and Officer Leo Harris, PPB, Officer Sergeant Leo Harris, PPB Training Officer. And Natasha and Leo, can you please provide us about 10 to 15 minutes of a presentation, and then we'll move into a discussion with some of our members.
Good evening, everyone, and thank you, Tia, for the introductions. We are very excited and honored to be part of this meeting and conversation. I'm Officer Natasha Hansberger. I've been with the Bureau for about 18 years and spent the last few years in the Chief's office, building ground-up community engagement. I don't want to say a unit, but more community engagement programs and processes bureau-wide. And very passionate about community engagement and community policing, and looking for avenues that are meaningful and defined in concert with communities, what that looks like and how is implemented and translated into a community safety arena. So I've never worked in training division outside of going to our mandatory in-service. So when I learned about the program that at that time, Sergeant Leo Harris was coordinating and running within training division program, we realized there's a lot of opportunity to intersect what I'm trying to do in the Bureau and foremost for the community, to connect our existing advisory groups and councils with this kind of unique one-day engagement and exchange and mutual learning. That is kind of our ultimate goal. And that's where Sergeant Leo and I kind of partnered up to ensure that our culturally culturally responsive advisory groups have an opportunity and access to attend that educational workshop, to put it in that way. So, which is the reason we have Sergeant Leo Harris here, because I don't manage training division, nor do I run that program and coordinate. I'm more of a facilitator between our community partners and different civic organizations like this one within the city of Portland, to ensure that they, where there is such a program in existence, and that we are looking for avenues to always improve, expand, and engage in this mutual learning. So for that reason, I just don't want to I want to make sure that Sergeant Leo Harris gets opportunity to talk about historically about this program, but I'm glad to be marginally involved with that. And thank you for your interest. I know that at our last academy, we had two PCCEP members who attended, and we learned a lot from them, and hopefully fostered some meaningful partnerships that will last a long time.
Yeah.
And Tia, we can talk forever, but I also want to be mindful of not hijacking your precious time. So if after Sergeant Leo introduces himself, if you want us to answer questions and have that kind of format, by all means, because again, the warning is we can talk for days about community policing. So.
Yes, thank you so much. And I'll just jump in. I forgot in the introduction that we'll do 15 minutes with each of you and then move into a time with question and answers and discussion. We really appreciate you being here tonight. Thank you. And Leo, are you available and ready? Thank you.
I am. Thank you very much for having us. I see a lot of familiar faces on here. So hello to everyone. My name is Leo Harris. I did get promoted last year, and now I'm a supervisor at East Precinct. But the reason I'm here is I have been in the training division for the last few years, working on a couple different things, patrol procedures, and then the wellness program. And during that time, I ended up becoming the coordinator of the Community Police Academy. And Officer Natasha mentioned it several times, just how important in community engagement is with the link to training. And so there's a lot of different groups on advisory councils and oversight groups. And I think that the Community Academy is a great way to figure out kind of where we're at right now as far as training, what police officers do out on the street, some of the stuff behind like our methodologies. Obviously, we got a new director of training, and she was at the last Community Academy, which was great. And I'm sure she'll have some impacts in the future. So the biggest thing is to provide awareness to these groups that are, a part of groups that might make recommendations. And so it is a 10-hour, one-day exposure. Some community academies around the country are open to a lot more people. Ours take a lot of logistics, and unfortunately, they're just only for people that are on different advisory councils. We've tried the format of doing every third Tuesday or a couple times a month for a couple hours, and it's just really challenging. People end up missing a lot of those sessions. So we do 1 10-hour. It's usually on a Saturday, because that's when our instructors and our building at the training division are available. And that's when, frankly, a lot of community members are available. Trying to get them either in the evenings or during work days can be a challenge. So a lot of times they're on Saturdays. The format of the day, we start off in the classroom and we go through some exposures to what police officers get trained in a variety of different topics: force, firearms, tasers, patrol procedures. And then we end up moving out onto the range, and we do some exposure to the range stuff and firearms. We don't shoot real firearms. The last part of the day, which a lot of people find the most meaningful, is the scenarios. We just call it scenario-based training. Sometimes people don't know or don't have an idea in their mind of what that looks like. And sometimes we say live action role play because there are police officers pretending to be victims and suspects and people in crisis. And then the people who come through the police or the community police academy get to go through some of those scenarios and try talking with people, helping people, taking reports, all the things that a police officer might do on a call. And throughout the day, each of our community members are paired up with a uniformed police officer. And so you have them with you during the classroom setting, obviously, but then also during the hands-on portions to ask questions, debrief scenarios as you're, moving from one scenario to the next. And then there's also, I forgot about one part. I keep trying to cut it out, but our police driving instructors will not let us. It's a PVO portion, and everybody seems to love it. So including the last community police academy. So they learn a little bit about how police officers drive and control their cars and things like that. I do know that there's a lot of people on here that have attended one, and I know that there's a lot more people that probably would like to attend one. So one of the things I was hoping is to have some of you all that are on here maybe explain your experience, good, bad, or otherwise, and maybe give kind of an idea to other people that are on here, especially if they're thinking about attending, what their experience was like. We've tried to increase our capacity, and so we're up to about 25 community members at a time. And so usually for PCCEP and some of these other groups, there's usually between 3 to 5 spots. And we always expect a few cancellations, especially, lately people have been getting sick and people are busy. And so there's always a few last minute cancellations, but that's our goal, is in the neighborhood of 20 to 25 community members. So are there any questions at this point? I'm sure there's something I forgot. And if not, I'd love to have some of the people, Leslie or Ashley, that just recently attended, maybe give their thoughts on it or talk about their experience. And I know I saw multiple other people, Barb and Yumi, and lots of people on here that have been. So would love
And
to
can I
have.
just add something, Leo, before we give the floor to our community leaders here, is that we are very serious and committed and methodical how we approach to creating the one day that goes by so fast, and there's so much passion and investment into maximizing that unique engagement with one another. So Sergeant Leo and I always have this lofty ideas, like we want to exploit every second, of course, right? But it doesn't work like that, because we want to foster human connections and work through some of our, fears and discomforts. But we also hold, before each session, we try to hold several info sessions via Zoom for many reasons. But foremost, we approach to this program understanding that we are asking of our community advocates, leaders, volunteers foremost, to come into a police building, right? Many of our members never been in police building or police station, thankfully, right? So we are really mindful of what that represents to so many people, and try to build as welcoming space as police training division can in theory ever be, right? But I just want to acknowledge that we know that many of our volunteers and students come from different backgrounds and different experiences and attitudes, not all pleasant, but we want to acknowledge that and give a space to those members to ask as many questions to help them be as comfortable as possible coming to engaging with us that day, because the whole objective and goal is to really foster that coming together and taking mutual ownership of what our community really needs and wants from the police, and vice versa. So just wanted to acknowledge that for our group, because we know we all come from different spaces and have a lot of different generational and community trauma. Thank you, Sergeant. And I'll stop talking, I promise, Tia.
You're doing great, thank you. But I see there's some questions already, but I think if we move on to Leslie and Ashley giving some input and then moving on to questions, since they recently attended. Are you ready to do that, Ashley or Leslie?
Yeah, and I honestly, I'm fine with like, I don't think it needs to be Ashley then Leslie or Leslie then Ashley. I feel like we can organically talk about our experiences. So I'm cool if you want to jump into anything that I say, Ashley. But yeah, and since I started talking, I can go ahead and kick it off. But yeah, I mean, I think it was already covered how like broad the training is. We walked in at 8 a.m. on a Saturday. That's normally a lot earlier than I get up on a Saturday. So that was already interesting. But I think, you know, just from like my perspective, my experience, when I walked in, I think I was the first to get there between us two. And I think the first thing that I noticed is everybody was in uniform. And I know that that's a requirement of when officers are on duty, but it was definitely a very intimidating moment walking in and seeing, you know, over 20 people in full uniform, like with everything on. So like that immediate, and I'm not a tall person. I don't take up a lot of space. So already that was somewhere you walk in and you're just like, what I do here, deer in the headlights moment. But after that, yes, there was, you know, right at the beginning, there was a chance to chit chat, get some coffee. There was the classroom presentations. And, you know, as already was mentioned, there's a lot of topics covered, and it really felt like we were scratching the surface on a lot of topics. I will say I would have liked to spend more time, you know, on certain topics and be able to really have that discussion, because I think for the most part, we were getting a lot of information, which is great. But I think also having the opportunity of, I don't know, it felt one way. And I think that's part of what I would have, I understand logistically not always possible, but it did feel one way. So while I received a lot of information, I feel like having more of an interaction and a dialogue would have been helpful. And I'll say the day was not boring. It was long. There was a lot of information. We went through the scenarios, and the 5 scenarios, I think we got put right in it. In the scenarios, we were pretending to be the police officers and interact with folks. And that was already an interesting thing because we have 0 training. And so for us, it was very much like I guess if I could give the overall event a theme, I would say it was like really focused on showing us the breadth and like how difficult police work is. Just really the variety of calls that the police handle and things like that, and just focus on kind of showing us almost the difficult parts of policing. I think one of the presentations talked about how the officers go through this walk or crawl, walk, run type of training. And I feel like we were put like right into the run because all of the scenarios were like super hard scenarios and like very difficult scenarios. So we got to see like the hardest parts. And I feel like to a degree that was the point. So yeah, and then I'm just kind of like looking at my notes here. Yeah, I think some of the interesting takeaways that like I got out of it and that, you know, just keep me thinking are some things like, you know, 30 calls in a 10-hour shift is not uncommon. And just thinking about, you know, thinking about a 10-hour shift going to 30 different calls that have all like in just those 5 calls, there was 5 different scenarios, right? Or those 5 scenarios. I think each one of those was very short. So it just like made me think about like the mental load that somebody experiences throughout that amount of time, like the fatigue that it might take. Like, I know, you know, I have a desk job. If I'm sitting and just thinking like just all those like different thought processes that you constantly have to, those like micro decisions, takes a lot. So just that, and knowing that I'm dealing with emails and other people are dealing with lives and things like that, just kind of is something that I'm still thinking about. And again, to me, it like really just reinforces the need for like the specialized training and the things that we're told that the police are doing to make policing safer. And, you know, to be honest, you know, was the police an appropriate response for all of those scenarios that we encountered, right? Like that, there's that question too. And not even just like alternative police methods, just alternative ways to solve community problems, just period, because those were all different like little community problems. And yeah, I think that kind of in a nutshell was like my experience, but Ashley, anything you can.
Yeah, no, yeah, agree. Yeah, it was really overwhelming when we walked in and just being like, oof, okay, 20, 30 guns, holsters, all professionals, but just, yeah, it was a little triggering for me. And that is my experience with police. So, but I really wanted to do this day. I really wanted to be able to come to this space and PCCEP and, really speak to this collaboration and this path forward of what community engaged policing is. So putting myself in the lion's den was, part of the goal of, taking on more of a leadership role at PCCEP too. And so I'm glad I did it. I really am, but it was definitely like an out-of-body experience sometimes. I was paired with Officer Chase Bryson, and I really enjoyed that beginning part where we just got to talk and like get to know each other. And he lives in Forest Grove. I grew up in Forest Grove. we got to just kind of talk as community members, and I really enjoyed that part because that really, I think, I think it was a little bit more of an ease. I think that's the word that comes to my mind, of ease of being there that day. Like, okay, I can do this. And yeah, like Leslie said, I mean, those scenarios, those were, police have a very hard job. They yo-yo back from like, trying to provide services to try not to get shot. Like we said, there was a schedule and we did the firearm. And I just, I don't know, just like, I think sharing how my experience, those scenarios felt like, and how it changed my, the way I responded, like Leslie said, we'd had no training, right? We were just walking in and doing these scenarios, and we had just done firearm training. So we had all the holsters and, fake training, fake gun. And I think one of the first scenarios was we were coming up to a car. Somebody was looking through the car. We had gotten a suspicious call, and, we were just like gently going up there, and then the person turned around, and I think it was you, Sergeant Harris, who shot at us. No, it was somebody else. No, somebody else. It was somebody else. Yeah. No. He wasn't. He was one of those presenters earlier in the morning. I remembered his face. He was all like, they all like dressed up, and I just remember when he turned around to shoot at us. I didn't know what I was doing. I was like, oh my God. And I just like froze. And I remember the officer, because after every scenario, we'd do a debrief, which I really enjoyed, because then we got to really just talk about what happened. And then we got to kind of hear, how difficult it is to calculate a decision. And in the training, there was a lot of information about the worry and all that, about that reaction gap, and how you're always sort of anticipating it a little, I was anticipating someone causing danger to you. And so that, that I took that in, that was real. I got to experience that. And then, how it ended up changing my thinking, like the next scenario, we get out of the car and we go, and, somebody's just sitting there suspiciously. And right away, I just put my hand on the holster. Like that was like, oh, I'm not doing that again. We're not going to get caught without a gun this time. So I don't know if civilian Ashley would ever be like, that's a decision I would want to make. So it was interesting to kind of be, to play that role. And like, I think like Leslie said, like that, not being trained, like having to have these difficult conversations. I think there was a little gap there for me. And I think what I wanted to ask Natasha and Sergeant Harris, just in the presentation, there was some conversation about a Police Academy 2.0. And just curious kind of what that thinking is, because I'm wondering if that's a space where we get to do that little bit more of a community conversation piece about what is community engaged policing, and what does, how does the training take in community input, and is there space for that, and is that community 2.0? I just noted because I noticed it wasn't on our survey afterwards, and I was excited to kind of fill that out and ask some questions there. So I thought I'd take this time, since you guys are here, to understand a little bit what those plans might be.
I'm happy to start, and then Sergeant Leo can add on. We historically, as many of you have dedicated a lot of your personal time to engaging on issues about policing and community safety and justice as a whole. We often have those like one-hit wonders events when we come together and we build the momentum, and then we all go home and resume our daily lives, and we go to policing and whatnot. So when Sergeant Harris and I ran about 2 years ago, ran Academy, there was this really great energy, right? I'm not saying it was all like we all solved issues of social injustices in Portland, but we were on the path of like continued conversations. And we recognize a huge institutional gap on our end for like not having pathways to capture momentums and engage in formats, not just in training division, but actually conducive to community dynamics, right? Outside of police building, maybe, to like dive deeper into what Leslie suggested, right? When you like, we dumped so much info on you, and which is normal for your civilian brain, right? But then like we walked away asking ourselves, so what? Like, what was the point of whole day and investment, and how, like, where do we go from here, right? Oh, there. So that's where, when Sergeant Harris and I realized, well, what if we just, for the lack of our creative ability to title that, we title it CPA 2.0, right? Which lacks so much creativity, but we are willing to reframe that in a way and build another session, shorter session that doesn't have scenarios, that we can, add on, having that foundation of basic tenets that we covered in the previous Academy, but then tackle much more complicated issues in a very constructive manner. And I don't know if I did justice to our concept. We did it one time. We were overwhelmed how it was well received from both our members, but also community partners who we call them CPA graduates, again, like for better term, but it was that natural educational pathway of building blocks for everyone involved, not just for community partners, for ourselves as well.
Yeah.
And I do have some thoughts, and I think it might answer both kind of Ashley's question about the 2.0, and then Leslie bringing up kind of the one-way information flow. I think there are a lot of people that are involved in justice reform and police reform, and that really want to jump into the hard questions, the things that they really want to focus on. And that's so natural and totally understandable. And I think until you have a little bit of a baseline or some kind of foundation built between some of the community members and some of the police officers, it's really hard to have those conversations that we really want to have. And so I think how I see the Community Academy, at least as it relates to training and where we're at, like you all are here serving on an oversight group right here. And I think one of the things that I tell people is that the Community Academy is like the starting of like that foundational understanding of like where we're at training wise. And I hope that it does lead to two-way conversations. I totally get that day there's not as much opportunity for you all to be giving us information, but I hope that's just the very start. And then whether it is the CPA 2.0s or whether it's the work that you're doing here on PCCEP or other groups that people are on, that can inform who you invite as guests and the topics that you look into. And maybe you all meet with the TAC and try to, engage with them, because I think they probably have the most amount, if I could be wrong, but they have a lot of impact on what training is doing or isn't doing. And so I think this is just a very foundation. This is not the deep, difficult, sometimes really thorny conversations that we all really want to get to. I think this is, in some ways, sometimes the start. And I love, and I hope in no way am I minimizing, Leslie, your experience. What I hear you saying, it's funny when I hear you say, like with the scenarios, that they were all really difficult. And it's funny. I love hearing that. And I don't know if we'll make some changes or not. Most of the scenarios are meant to be very static and not moving fast, so that there is a lot of room for you to stop and talk to your partner officers and there's not a lot that's actively happening in an effort to show like the gray areas and like the thought process and try to have you all solve problems in the moment that police officers are out trying to solve every day. There is the one scenario that happens very fast. And obviously there's different reasons behind that one, but most of them are really meant to be slow and show like very rudimentary, very average calls that people go on every day, and just how challenging they can be and all the different layers and levels to it. But I really, really appreciate that feedback on the
Yeah.
scenarios.
I will say I will slightly disagree with that because
Yeah.
you know, like for example, like I can point to the scenario in the car where the guy had like a level 4 misdemeanor and had like battered his wife and was like threatening the officer. If you're telling me that that's a typical scenario where, you know, like that's I yeah, that's the part where I'm like, okay, I don't know about that, you know?
Well, and fair enough. I don't know how often that happens, but I would bet throughout the city multiple times a day, there's somebody with a warrant that gets arrested out of a car that says, I'm not going. And then they're in a
Yeah.
situation where they're like, are we going to use force? Is this?
For sure.
So I think
Yeah.
it happens with a lot of regularity, I
Yeah.
think.
Yeah. I think like when the guy was like threatening my family, that was weird. And I'm like, wow, they'll really say anything type thing, you
Well,
know?
I need to check into those scenarios a little more then, because that is not, that's not a part of the script.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean,
Um,
the
And if I
scenario
can
where
just
we
add
had,
to Ashley's point in terms of like, you know, going back to 2.0, so we don't disclose way too much about scenarios if other members
Oh,
will
right.
attend,
Yeah.
right?
Fair
A
enough.
spoiler alert here. But it's also a matter of being honest with community partners going through Academy, the matter of sustainability, so that we do not overcommit and then underdeliver in those kind of formats. So, and not that anybody needs another format or engagement on top of your duty on PCEP and many other forums that you sit on and advocate for improvement and justice. So this is a conversation we do want to have with our CPA graduates about how does this look like, right? So that we are not the sole engineer and architect of this partnership. It takes two entities, right, to shape that. But at the end, it really is about, I'm confident that many of you in the history of your engagement with the city have seen so many efforts come up and fall faster than they. So I just want to be honest about not overcommitting to something that we might not have structural capacity to sustain. So for that reason, I believe Sergeant Harris one-day academies kind of almost in our budget and funding to have 2 or 3 a year. So that's kind of, I don't want to say guaranteed because nothing's guaranteed in life, but anything outside of that, I think requires a lot of conversations and an honest approach with one another, what is fair and what's sustainable. But
And
we
one
have seen
thought,
that
I
2.0
see some other,
is amazing.
yes,
Thank you
I see
both.
some other hands up.
Sorry, if I can interject really quickly, just want to thank you, officers Hasenberg and Officer Harris. I know that Ashley and Leslie shared a lot of their experience, and you touched on some of their experiences from your perspective, and are getting great feedback. I'm just curious if there's something else that you heard from Ashley or Leslie that you want to touch on or you want to further explain. This would be a great opportunity. And if not, we can also go into questions from other folks.
I don't remember anything else that I wanted to explain. I did want to throw in one kind of caveat just for everybody as far as logistics. And these are a difficult day to pull together for the training division with all the trainers. They are in full training mode, trying to hire police officers and get them trained. And so they've had a lot of different advanced academies and training and then in-service training. And so it is a challenge and it's pretty expensive to do. Some people ask, well, why don't we either make it easier or less logistically challenging and take out scenarios or some of these other things, or not have a partner officer for people? I'd be interested in Ashley and Leslie's thoughts on not having a partner officer throughout the day, just ways to bring the cost down a little bit and how many people are needed. But 1 or 2 or 3 of these throughout the year is probably about the most that we're going to be able to do for a while. It's not any one person's job at this point. I'm still coordinating these, even though I'm over at East Precinct as a patrol supervisor. And so we love doing it. I think there is a lot of benefit to it. And I really, like I said, I hope it does inform a lot of the questions and things that people start working on in these oversight groups after the end of that day. And we look forward to trying to do 2.0s, but to echo what Natasha said, there's when and how and what the 2.0s are is somewhat, the budget and a bunch of other things impact that. But yeah, maybe I'll stop there and I'll just start answering questions.
I'd like to just kind of check in on that. And, I definitely think that having a partner, for example, having a partner officer was really helpful. I think that was actually the highlight of the experience, just talking to someone one-on-one and asking questions, asking why you do this, because I think the presentation of the day was so packed and we were kind of going boom, 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 that having an officer there to sort of reflect in real time, like, why are you guys do it this way? Or what is, and have that conversation. So, I totally understand, like, there were a lot of trainers, there were a lot of officers there. You guys had a lot of, people, and that costs a lot of money. There's hours there. So, I really appreciate everyone's time there. Because I think those little things you guys did, I saw like that to make it an experience that would be worthwhile. And Natasha, like you said, I think I'm really glad that you're thinking about how because if these opportunities are for advisory committee members, and our goal is to connect public safety and PBB to the community, I definitely want to kind of restate that there is a gap in like the other way around. Like, I think we came to you when we saw your space, and like you said, we got a foundational understanding, which I think I'm really appreciative of, because now we can have, like you said, we can kind of get in rooms together and have a little bit more of a real conversation, because I understand now how much you want to get home to your, I have an office job too. So you guys have the hardest job I've ever seen up close. But that gap between sort of community input, which is what PCCEP does, like that's our hat. So that's kind of what I was wearing that day, of trying to understand when we hear community members come to this space or they contact us and they say, we don't have trust with PPB, they're doing this, like that Guardian article that just came out from the incident 2 years ago, like that I'm hearing that's continues to crush the trust. So, and I know you didn't say the word trust, but I do think that's part of community engagement, right? Like, and meeting each other. And so, I am curious, and maybe it's not an answer you have right now, but I am curious how we can stay connected to how you're envisioning how we're going to step more into those like harder conversations as community members, so that we feel heard, and then we can come back to these spaces and we say, there is listening and there is learning, and it's not just kind of coming from one side. And again, I don't know if you have those answers now, but I would be curious to keep us posted on what those steps were, or maybe you can't answer like what you envision, but the actual steps, I would love to stay more in contact. Because I think that'd be really useful for this space.
And we will definitely stay connected, Ashley, and keep providing information, seeking. I don't know how to say this, seeking input, because it sounds very one directional. So forgive me for lack of a better English, but really looking for ways to just incorporate one another. How about that? So that, Leo and I, when we engage with the communities, we come into those sessions and go into spaces with the mindset that, like, sometimes we are conditioned to think that we know what you want and need, right? So we are learning to really like not have those biases and assumptions, and instead, help me understand what is working. Hopefully something's working, right? So, and what is not. And that's when we had our CPA 2.0, it was more theme specific, that allowed for that for those who went through academy, do not participate, regularly with PPB, to help us channel demographic or community segment that is not openly, visibly present and their voice is heard when it comes to police issues. So to dispel some of the disparities and imbalances of power.
Yeah.
So thank you for saying that, Ashley.
Yeah, thank you. That's great. I like that.
And one thought on Ashley, liking the partner officer piece and saying that was one of her favorite parts. I love hearing that. This is certainly open for discussion, and we have made a lot of changes to the community academy, and we're always looking for ways to make it better. But almost all of the different parts at the end, people tell us a different part was their favorite, and they connected with it. And same with the information and the topics we covered. We've constantly battled with, do we take one out in order to make room for other stuff? Do we focus on one thing over another? And it's hard because a lot of the feedback we get is so diverse. People love all the different topics, or that's their favorite. They would hate for it to be taken out. Other people would rather for a focus of something else. And so that is a challenge. And you brought up the crawl, walk, run, or maybe Leslie did, as far as felt like we hit the ground running. In some ways that might be true, because we definitely don't look at this as a training where we're trying to get you to learn something from the ground up and then be able to apply it. It's just information and an exposure to so many things. And in my mind, it's kind of one of the starting places for figuring out what you want to look into or what you want to connect on. But we definitely hear that about it being kind of fast paced and very full.
Yeah, and just to that, one suggestion I'd love to just add, because towards the end, I think the last presentation that was about CIT, crisis intervention team, and that sort of history, and I was waiting for that. And so I think that as the day went on, agenda gets squished. I totally, I'm a coordinator, I totally get how that happens. It's easy peasy to do that. So maybe if it could be in the beginning part, which, I know the firearms and all that stuff plays into the scenarios, but I think when you're the audience that you had that day, the advisory groups that were there, I think those are the things that we're like trying to figure, try to understand more of so that we can relate to, bring it back to. So that'd be just kind of maybe a logistical suggestion.
Totally. And that's on me. I made the call to start late, wait for everybody to get there. And that put us about 30 minutes behind. And we're not going to do that next time. I'll be much more clear. We're starting on time. And just in that light, I would say maybe invite Dr. Lisbeth Gerritsen and have some of that same presentation and conversation if that's something you're interested in. I know that she has gone to. Yep.
Well, thank you so much, Ashley and Leslie, for sharing your experience. We'll move over to Tia so she can ask her question or make her comment, and then Odelia, and then we'll go to the public.
Okay, thank you. I have a question for Natasha. You said in your presentation that you wanted to foster what the community wants in policing. Is there a time for that during the academy? And then Chuck Lavelle working with you.
Oh, yeah, no, again, I did have that little disclaimer, Leo and Natasha have these lofty, selfish goals for our project. So the theme of building trust and soliciting community input, Tia, is interwoven, like we think maybe masterfully, but I'm sure Ashley and Leslie will be like, no, it wasn't that clear throughout the entire day and entire engagement. With so much intentionality, right? That, whether it's the conversation that, for example, Leslie and Ashley had with their partner officer on the way to the scenario, on the way back to the classroom, like every segment was designed to allow for that both collective, but foremost individual trust building between a student and a police officer. So we engage with our officers afterwards to obtain as much information that we can so that we can better tailor and improve that. But honestly, it is that foundational day that would lead us to maybe a second meeting or second coming together space, not as formal meeting, that will allow for more constructive, maybe even more honest and maybe more, deeper conversation about it, right? But we do envisage that CPA 2.0 would be that direct nexus, Tia, to more trust focus through conversations, through dialogue and that type of engagement. And we didn't get a chance to say that because don't want to come across as this is all from PPB lens, but just would like to highlight and make you think that one day engagement for partner officers who are typically in a patrol function, this is also a very unique privileged day, an opportunity for them to spend a whole day with a community leader and learn and talk, because they rarely ever get a chance to do that while on active duty, because they go from one crisis to another. So that transformational change is also part of the trust building TIA that allows individual officer to have 10 hours of privileged access to community member and, you know, expand views and learn something that they don't get a chance to learn through the mechanics of their job, if that makes sense, Tia.
Yes, it does. Thank you. I have one more question.
Go ahead.
I saw on the agenda item, it says required PPB training for PCCEP members. Is Community Academy and ride-alongs required for all Police Academy volunteers?
Terry, did you want to respond to that?
In the PCCEP plan, there are a number of options that can satisfy the PCCEP training requirements, and those are two of the options, yes.
Thanks, Tia. We'll go to Odelia.
Yeah, you both kind of already answered this a little bit, but I was hoping you could speak to like what you feel is kind of like the purpose behind this, and where you see like the future of it going, if that makes sense. But like why this exists the way it does.
Well, I can jump on that. I think it's, in my mind, like one of the foundational pieces to having a conversation about the things that we really want to talk about. I think that there's a lot of people that have different things that they want to talk about. And I think sometimes that's challenging without a little bit of a foundation. I think Ashley brought up the word trust. I always feel like the Community Academy can lead to building a foundation that can eventually lead to trust. It helps facilitate conversations and information. And obviously, I think Natasha talked about it. I think whether it's 2.0s or whether it's the work that you're all doing here, I think that the Community Academy and the information that you get there and the experience you have can lead to focusing the work that you might do or the questions you might ask, or the topics that you all might dig into. Because I think it's critical for the community at large, who you all are representing and working for, to know what the police are doing. And I think a lot of that on the officer side starts with training, how we train and what we train and why we train.
And I will just add to that, Odelia, thank you for the question. We've done, you know, to a degree, some research nationally to learn what other police organizations are doing nationally, right? What kind of programs, concept, what their objectives are. And of course, we want to make it unique to Portland and unique to our, you know, socioeconomic cultural environment, right? And it is not what maybe used to be Sergeant Leo, like, you know, show and tell how great we are. We really want to engage with those who are involved on these committees in conversations about what justice is and what training is and what policies surround and inform and dictate our training, right? Because that seems to be the most focus of public community of the community and public interest when it comes to police and justice issues. So that's, as Leo said, not to sound repetitive, but kind of a foundational platform to further dive into concepts that, for the most part, the community might learn from media or other, you know, other outlets, but not from how is that shaped, perceived, executed, and maintained in Portland within PPB, not national policing constructs, if that makes sense.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. Now we'll go to Kala and then Barbara.
Hi, I just had a question. I wanted to know if PPB was going to expand the community days to involve youth. When I was younger, I got to go to a crime and investigation camp, and it was really fun. They had the K9 unit there. We did like a mock crime scene. I actually got to be the suspect and I ran. And an officer, another time, he like spit in a cup. So they like demonstrated how forensic science was done. Also older, when I was in my sociology class, my professor invited, I think it was the Gresham Canine Unit, and they did drug testing and talked about it. So I was kind of wondering if PPP is going to be expanding that model.
That's a great question. Thank you. Obviously, we think the youth are incredibly important, and especially having them have the ability to weigh in on policing and things like that would be important. I don't know is the answer. I know that there are other groups in the Bureau that work on things like something called Camp Rosenbaum, where the Bureau does facilitate a camp, or they used to. I know we've made a lot of cuts and had to do a lot of things because of staffing and budget stuff. So I think that might have been impacted. So I know that they run a camp like that or used to. I don't know about the plans going forward for that. That's not something at this point that Officer Natasha and I work on. But if you'd like more info on that, we can try to connect you with whoever would be working on that.
And Kayla, not to promote other agencies, but if you have interested youth who would want to learn more about that scientific aspects of policing, the FBI has the 10-week youth academy that have more resources and infrastructure to deliver that. But if you're interested, we are happy to connect you with the FBI Community Academy coordinator if you have youth who would want to pursue that, so that we don't miss opportunity for youth engaging with federal law enforcement.
Great, thank you. Let's go to Barbara and then Dan.
I'd like to say two kind of parallel things which are related to each other. One is that I hear people talking about police work being the most dangerous job. And yet, when I look at the Bureau of Labor, the federal government Bureau of Labor statistics, they're not even in the top 10. And people in my family have done very dangerous jobs. My dad was almost killed a couple times when he was young before he got into a safer job. My brother was almost killed. One of my brothers was almost killed on jobs. He also worked as a roofer, which actually is in the top 10 most dangerous jobs. I worked on dangerous jobs, and they didn't focus on, they did do safety training, they did warn us about stuff and safety procedures, but they did not try to scare us like that, like you did in that scenario. So the second part of what I want to say is that about 15 or so years ago, maybe 20, I don't know, when I worked for the city of Santa Rosa as an electrician, they had something called personal threat assessment or something like that, personal safety training. And it was given by a police officer, interestingly. And his main 2 points were, don't go around all day. Like if you're walking down the streets, particularly like as a woman, you know, like a young woman who's walking down the street, you are a target. And I don't think most men quite get that, but a young woman walking around at night, whatever, is a target. So he says, don't look and say, somebody could be in that car. Maybe there's somebody behind that bush. Oh, he says, by the time then something happens, you're like so in your head, you're not going to be able to react properly. So what he told us to do is be alert and calm. Like, don't be on your cell. Well, we didn't have cell phones then, but don't be like reading a book or like looking straight forward or something. Look around, looking at what's normal. And then when something happens, you will be aware. And he said, trust your intuition. So in that context of being fairly calm and alert, if you get a wave of fear, and he talked about a firefighter that walked into a mini mart and he started opening the door after work, and he started opening the door and he felt a wave of fear come over him. So he shut the door and went home. And later, because he knows police officers, they told him there had been a holdup, and they asked him more questions. And it turns out his wave of fear came from the kind of subterranean, the clues he was picking up that he wasn't really aware of. And that's how you really keep yourself safe, not by being terrified all the time. And I know I went through that as a young woman you know, taking martial arts and being ready to fight. And that is so draining. And finally, I had to learn to calm down, think about what I could do to make myself safe, and then be alert. And the same thing on the job. The jobs I worked on, I mean, I worked for Caltrans on a road crew. I worked in construction. I mean, I worked around high voltage, standing on a ladder and drilling in the ceiling. And I even did some things that were OSHA would not have approved of. And so, but they didn't focus on us being terrified all the time. They focused on us learning to do our jobs safely. And so I feel like there's a difference where the police officers are getting scared, so scared that that from the get-go, like somebody's going to shoot me. Well, that could happen. I know they have a dangerous job that I wouldn't want to do because I'm kind of a reactive person. I wouldn't be good at it. But I really think that you have to lower the sense of panic about it. So thank you for listening.
Well, and thank you for your comment. And I'd be interested in Ashley and Leslie's thoughts on that, and some of the people who've been through a community academy before. Certainly in general, so that everyone knows, we are not training our police officers to be scared. We're not training them to be reactionary and that, you know, there's somebody hiding around every corner that's going to try to hurt them. It's funny you bring up the Bureau of Labor and Industries stats, because when I used to teach the patrol procedures part of that class, I actually had that in there, and I actually brought up the question, like, why do we talk about officer safety as police officers? We're not even in the top 10 jobs. And so I totally hear all of your thoughts. And I think in my mind, one of the things that is so interesting and challenging for police officers is the uncertainty. So your average roofer, your average logger, your average commercial fisherman who are in the most dangerous jobs don't go to work every day worrying that some person might try to kill them. They know and understand the risks. It's very dangerous being up on roofs and using chainsaws to chop down trees and being, you know, commercial. There's so many dangerous jobs out there. And I think that the statistics certainly don't show that policing is one of the most dangerous jobs. I think the uncertainty of it is what's challenging, knowing that somebody could try to target you, somebody could be try to hurt you. And then your story about the 7-Eleven and your firefighter, like that, and cops know what they're in for, and they sign up to be the ones that go to that store when there's a robbery happening. But it is challenging day after day. And so I'm at East Precinct, and there are so many calls every day involving weapons and people that are not going to go with you willingly, potentially. Mm-hmm. And so it's hard. Your job every day is to go and try to keep people safe and help people get justice. And if a crime's happened, you document it, you try to take the person into custody. And a lot of times those are people that don't want to go to jail. They don't want to be held accountable. And a lot of times there are weapons involved. And so that is why we train officers to be prepared, to do as much as they can to try to keep themselves safe, but not in any way to be afraid all the time and think people are out to get them. Not that that's never happened. And then my last point before I quit rambling, I think one of the risks that you have in a police career is just becoming complacent. You end up talking to so many people with weapons. I would bet most days we end up arresting somebody with a gun that they shouldn't have, and we don't use deadly force on them. Sometimes we use no force at all. And so, I mean, it is risky every day, and it's easy to get complacent and not take the safety precautions that you should, because you end up talking to people every day. And that's one of the reasons we do that scenario in the community academy, is to give that experience. But also, you can't go through your career standing 50 yards away from people talking, because that's just not how normal conversation happens. You can't go interview people. You can't talk to suspects. If you talk to suspects that far away all the time because you were worried about a threat, they'd run away, and they do run away. Right. So you have to get close. So it's all about balance, and it's hard because there's plenty of times where officers don't have any information about weapons and they go and have to interact, and later you find out about it and get surprised. And so I think the uncertainty of the job is what makes it challenging, not that it's actually dangerous. So I do appreciate all your thoughts on that.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. Next we'll go to Dan and then Ashley.
Thank you. Thank you, Sergeant and Officer. It's helpful to hear your perspective on this, and but also especially the community members on PCCEP. And since you weren't here, I want to introduce myself before. I'm Dan Handelman. I use he, him pronouns. I'm with Portland Cop Watch. And I just want to piggyback a little bit on what Barbara was saying, that, you know, if you went to a training academy for truck driving or for flying airplanes, and they said, oh, what would you do if this door blew out of this airplane? You know, it would freak you out. Yeah, it may not be designed to scare you, but it's something that's not going to happen that often. And just, you know, if there's, once you're trained how to do this stuff and you're doing it 200 days a year, which I think is what police officers do, I think that we become more naturally to learn how to make those decisions. But when you put on the spot like that, it does make you feel like you're trying to be, you know, they're trying to scare you. Of course, those training academies aren't going to ask questions like, oh, are we damaging the environment by flying around these airplanes or driving these trucks? Because those are big questions that make you question why you want to be in this profession in the first place and whether you're doing harm to society. So the fact that the police don't make space for these community questions about should we have police doing these things at all is problematic. And they should be thinking about that in those terms, I think. So I do have two questions, and I'm hoping I can answer to them. Oh, before I go on to that, it's too bad Nathan Castle, who's one of your members, isn't here, because he is on the Training Advisory Council, and he probably has a lot of insight into this whole issue. But so my two questions are, we've been bringing up the idea for years that officers should have to do a homeless immersion for 24 hours and live on the streets and know what it's like to be a houseless person, where you also have to worry about everybody coming up to you and trying to hurt you or take your stuff or push you along, or when you see flashing police lights that they might try to take your stuff and arrest you. So that one, are you going to have a houseless immersion for every police officer? And two, if it's required for these training, for these advisory bodies to take this training, maybe I'm misunderstanding it, but it sounded like you're saying only 3 spots out of 25 are set aside for advisory people on these academies. And it seems like there should be more priority to the people who are actually doing this than to general community members. Thank you.
To your second question first, there are neighborhood association spots. There are advisory council spots. We have several different advisory councils. There's TAC spots, training advisory council spots, PCCEP, IPR, CRC. I can't remember all of them. And so that's why there's only 3 to 5 spots for each. And so this last time, I think if there had been 5 people from PCCEP, we would have made that work. Sometimes it is who gets back to us first as far as filling up those spots. We probably at any given time have 50 or so community members that are on advisory councils that need to go to one. And so they end up just having to wait through COVID. We didn't have one. And then now, just based on budget and timing, I think we're going to try to do 3 a year. So that's how those spots end up working out. Your first question, I do not have the answer to that. And I don't know who would be in charge of answering that about a 24-hour houseless immersion program for officers.
But Leo, if I can add to Mr. Handelman's question about the logistics and spots, I hope you would take our word. We are very mindful and aware of space limitations, and we only wish we had physical ability to have 30, 40 people in a class, but it's, you know, matter of safety, matter of ability. It's Ashley and others there, you know, it can get so busy so fast that it's destructive. But our numbers are not like a firmly set. There's only 3 members for PCCEP. We are very fluid and flexible. We understand that we are asking a lot of you community partners to dedicate a whole day for this, right? So we have a lot of cancellation. So we're always looking for ways to do list as mindfully and meaningfully that would cause least disruption to your lives, right? So, you know, we had a standing list, waiting list, like anything that would allow community members to be at that seat. But sometimes, as Ashley mentioned, logistically, you get so overwhelmed and the day of, very often, Leo, we do have like people just don't show up, right? So we kind of never know how to anticipate and get ready for that without asking Ashley, could you please have a training division be on a standby just in the event? So it's a lot of, we don't want to come across as disrespectful and disregarding your personal affairs either. I wish there
And
was a
there's-
better way to orchestrate.
And there's more groups I'm forgetting.
Mhm.
I just realized the FitCog, who's the oversight group for the FIT officers and ECST officers, city council members and some of their staff are all also included. So it fills up pretty fast.
Great, thank you. Let's move on to Ashley.
Yeah, thank you. So yeah, I raised my hand to sort of add some insight. I think Sergeant Harris, you asked my insight about that training for fear and training for uncertainty. And I think, yeah, I definitely walked away using that word was in my mind, and has been in my mind in reflection of like learning how much uncertainty there is in an officer's day to day. And it's like a yo-yo. They're just like going from, again, like providing services to not trying to get shot. But I do want to give like my assessment of some part of that training, where in the beginning, I think it really was about understanding how dangerous the job is. Like that was a big message that I took from the presentations, that there's that reaction gap, and there's training on all the firearms. Like we were really, I think the program was really drilling, maybe that's a strong word, but just really felt like we were being presented, and then we were put in those scenarios to understand how hard the job is. And I certainly walked away with that. But if that's not the goal, or if the goal is to make more of that community collaboration, or that community like foundational building together, so that we can have harder conversations together, I would say that's missing, because the program was more about the scenarios of how, being a police, and, it's putting us in those shoes, literally, right? Like we were in the vest, we were in the belts, we sat around. I was very uncomfortable, although it was kind of cool to like just put my hands like this all day. It was, I'll say that. But I just want, and it's not a what's the word I'm looking for? Just, it's not like I'm not knocking what the presentation was doing, but that's why I would love a 2.0 to sort of lean more into what I think you really want this to be. And I understand what you're saying, Sergeant Harris, about like that foundational understanding. But I also understand what the community is saying, like why, how are the police coming and understanding the community side? I mean, that's kind of what the day is. I know being a houseless person isn't a job, but it is an experience in our city. Or I think somebody put some, suggestions here about some shelters in the area, and what I really wanted to get across, and I really wanted to tell the community this, of what I kind of walked away with. Yeah, I do think I learned there are some scenarios that police might not be the best for. And honestly, I got this, Sergeant Bryson and I had this reflection together, and he even shared it. He shared how much this job has changed him. He shared how, he works in the behavioral health unit, right? And he's like, I understand there are some scenarios that we show up and there's already this automatic danger set in tone because of how, police, like, there's, it's an institution that has a history. And so he was the one who was reflecting that with me. Like, he understands, like, especially when we were talking about the reaction gap presentation. And after that, I remember we had a break, and I remember we chatted just about, he understands that, like, sometimes cops going into the situation do make the situation more dangerous because someone reacts according to that feeling of, not, maybe not liking cops, or just being triggered by it for whatever reason. So those are like the difficult conversations. It'd be really cool to get into them a little bit more. And so, I think it's a kind of a bigger conversation, but I did want to share my experience in what I took away, and, resonated to what I think some of the community members are saying, of how are you jumping into the other shoes, and then also, is policing, policing is a dangerous, but if there's a tweaking to the training, maybe the training is a little bit more, a little less of that, trying to, I'm gonna stop talking. I feel like I'm just talking too much, because I think these are just like, this is like a bigger conversation that, should involve more people. And
you know, in that training. And you know, we look forward to just, you know, and you know, working with TAC and working, you know, closely with that advisory board that I think has more influence on training. I think that could be some good steps too that PCCEP could do. Yeah.
I like
So
it.
not a
Look
question,
forward
just
to the
a
conversation.
yeah.
I have lots of thoughts, but I will, other people still have their hands up, so I won't respond to all of them.
Thank you so much. So we'll go to Odelia, and I know Tia wanted to talk a little bit about the ride along. So Odelia, go ahead.
Okay, yeah, thank you. And thank you both for like being here and answering our questions. It's
Thanks for
very much
having us.
appreciated. But I was kind of thinking like along the lines of what Ashley was just bringing up, and like the concern over like the messaging being like being a police officer is dangerous, and like, which yes, that is true, but at the same time, like it's important to recognize that like being a police officer is a choice, right? And putting on that uniform is a choice. And like when you think about relationships the other way around, and like being a community member and having a fear of the police like isn't a choice always, or being a houseless person and like fearing criminalization and harm, like that's not a choice in like the same kind of way. And so I think that's just like a really important framing to have. And same with like being a person of color, like you don't choose your interactions with the police, like it's not kind of like a mutual relationship in that way, if that makes sense. And just something I wanted to name. But also I know that it's 7:44 and there's 6 minutes left, so it'd be great to have Carrie talk about your ride along experience if possible. I don't know if you all have any like closing remarks or anything. We kind of got carried away. So
No,
yeah.
thank you, Delia. I would just thank everyone for inviting us and giving us a space to illuminate some of these topics. And I feel like Sergeant Harris and I learned a lot just from your input in conversations, and it won't go unnoticed or unimplied. So I appreciate the candor, and thank you for really being kind to us. I appreciate that. And we'll be back for sure, because you know where to find us. And this is not like a one-time visit that will never come back, because this is a continued learning and growth process for us as well. So thank you.
You go ahead, Tia.
Well, I do know that part of this section was not only Community Academy, but also the ride-along program. And Leo and Natasha, are you involved in the ride-alongs as well? As far as
I don't know that anyone is involved in the ride-along program, but maybe I said too much right now.
Okay. Well, we can move forward with those of us who's been part of a ride-along and talk about our experiences. Can you stay on a little bit longer, or do you need to take off?
No, we'll stay with you.
Okay, feel free. Thank you so much. Carrie, I know you recently went on a ride-along. Would you like
Yes,
to?
thank you, Tia. I think I'm the most recent PCCEP member to do a ride along. Thank you, Officers Hansberger and Harris as well for everything that you do. I'll keep it short, but it sounds like to summarize what your goal is in your department is to foster mutual commitment or understanding of what policing work is like, and I would say that the ride along very much did that. Understanding came immediately to me when I was riding in the shoes of a police officer for just a few hours. It really helped open my eyes. Nothing revolutionary, but very much like, wow, this is everything that they deal with every day. And that was very helpful. I imagine that the CPA is more of a commitment because you're making those decisions side by side rather than just being a passenger. But I was happy to be a passenger and I learned a lot. I'd highly recommend it.
Thank you, Carrie. Anybody else want to share their thoughts?
I can talk about my ride-along experience, but it was in 2022. So but I took notes and I still remember it pretty vividly. Am I the only other person that's gone on a ride-along in the group today? Okay, I went on my ride along in 2022, and the three things that stand out the most to me is my own stereotype about the police officer I went on the ride along with. He was probably about 20 years younger than me and white. And when we went on our first call, it was to a Spanish speaker, and he was called on because he was fluent in Spanish. So my stereotypes kind of went out the door right after I met him. And we went to a low income, sorry, my nose is running pretty bad. We went to a low income housing apartment, and the entire family spoke Spanish, and he jumped in and was able to communicate with the family. And in the low housing apartment, another thing that stood out to me was all the kids came running up to him asking for stickers, and he had about 20 stickers, and he was giving out stickers to all the kids. And one of the little black girls said to him, "I can't wait to give this to my brother because he hates cops." And so the girl and the police officer there talked a little bit about cops and his job, and he just really took the time to talk with the kids and giving them the stickers. And we talked about community engagement at that point and building community relationships with people in these different areas. And so it's really nice conversation after he was talking with all the kiddos and they wanting to talk to him, and just observing that was really interesting. And him being able to speak Spanish with the entire family was really interesting to see. We went on 6 different calls in 2 hours, and one of the calls was a person who was part of a really big investigation, and she was lying to the police officer about what she was doing, and he was talking to downtown at the same time, and he had to make a quick decision on how to deal with her trying to get out of a situation. And it was really interesting listening to how he was communicating with her and listening to downtown at the same time when he was trying to figure out her situation. It felt like a lot, and I didn't write down any notes. It's just things I have in my head. That was, I know she was trying to trick him. And we were in the same parking lot as that person. And at the same time we were working with her, the we were in Target, and they came out and said that there was someone trying to take everything out of the store, and could we come help him? And so I had just gone through a training on people in mental health crisis. And so we were all talking about this situation, and he thought he could have it handled as far as the mental health crisis that was happening in Target. And he was multitasking with Target, the person in the parking lot, and downtown at the same time. And so I was just observing and feeling like I was keeping up, but it was a lot. And that stood out to me. And then we went to another call right after that where someone called in that a person was impersonating a police officer. So we went to that apartment, and it was this really, really little tiny Hispanic guy who was misunderstood. He was using a flashlight in his car, and the police officer had to look at the flashlight and just say, make sure it's not red or blue and you're fine. But when we were standing there, when we got out of the apartment, the other thing that stood out for me was we got out of the car and we were standing in the apartment waiting for this impersonator to go find the impersonator. And the first thing I thought of is how vulnerable I felt. That it just felt like we were open in the parking lot, and I just felt really vulnerable in front of the police officer's car, and just had a sense of that vulnerability. It was really packed full of events, 6 calls in 2 hours, and those are the 3 that stood out for me. Just feeling like it could keep up, but it was felt a little overwhelming and vulnerable, and to not have stereotypes about someone. Or, I mean, we all have stereotypes, but I just realized my stereotype right there in the moment of this young white guys. Is he really going to go into this family that all speak Spanish and do well? And he did really, really well. And it was just really cool to see. And with all the kiddos, it was really cool to see. So I really enjoyed my experience because I learned a lot. And the officer and I had a long conversation about equity and justice when I'm doing with PCCEP, and he talked about being young and really trying to make the difference. And I had a good experience.
Thank you, Tia.
Thank you.
Thank you for sharing. We may go a few minutes over. Looks like Leslie has her hand up. Go ahead.
Yeah, just wanted to confirm, I guess, more than anything, but the 6 scenarios that you experienced with that officer, Tia, were any of them similar or the same or something like that? Or was it like, because I'm thinking like, I don't know, my head goes to math. But you know, it's like 6 scenarios. That's 20 minutes a scenario average, mind shift, doing a mind shift, you know, like
Okay.
20 times. That's so to me, I'm like, so
Right.
yeah.
Let's see. I'm trying to think back at my notes, but the first one was the call to the family that spoke Spanish. Someone hit her car in the parking lot and was accusing her of hitting her. And then the second call was to DSW for a shoe theft. And then the third call, he was going to, oh no, the third call was on Sandy to the U-Haul because there was a theft at the U-Haul place. It was 2 thefts, and the Target was happening at the same time. He got the call from the lady who was lying about a stolen car and a super big crime. And I was really told to be confidential. So I feel like I don't want to go too much into this.
I mean, really,
Yes.
the details aren't necessary. I just
I
wanted
know.
to like more of a confirmation. It sounds like those 6 scenarios were all different, enough that they were like different scenarios, not like, yeah.
Yes. Impersonation, car being hit, 2 thefts, 2 thefts, and then a car theft. And then 2 things happened out of that car theft situation.
Thanks, Tia. Great memory, by the way. Do you mind, now that we're at the end of this portion of the presentation, do you mind closing us off? And want to really appreciate Officers Hansberger and Harris for being here today. Thank you so much.
Yes, can you turn the ending slides on, please?
Yeah, so we're gonna shift into our open public comment portion here. And so this can be for PCCEP members or community members. If you have any comments to share about the conversation that's already happening, or if you have any comments unrelated to today's agenda, now is the time for those. So please feel free to raise your hand at this time.
We have Dr. Allen. Go ahead, Dr. Allen.
I went on a ride along in the late 90s with a police officer, a Portland police officer who was a woman, a lesbian. And in those days, she wasn't really more sure whether she was in danger from the public or from other Portland police. Being lesbian and in uniform was dangerous in and of itself. I'm glad that those days are behind us.
Thank you, Dr. Allen. Dan Handelin. Dan, you're up if you can hear me.
Sorry, I forgot. I muted my phone. Sorry. So this morning there was a hearing at City Council to induct 4 new members into the Police Review Board, which I know it's confusing how many different oversight boards there are, but the Citizen Review Committee that you talked about a little bit before has open meetings where they hear appeals of misconduct cases, whereas the Police Review Board has private meetings and mostly made up of police officers, and there's like 1 or 2 members of the community that sit in on those. So they inducted 4 new members to rotate in on those panels, one of whom was Pastor Wisner. We were making comments about the Police Review Board and the policies they have and the reports that come out twice a year from them, and how those reports are very opaque, not transparent, because they block out the names and the genders of the people and what precinct it was in and even what day the hearing was held. And we're trying to kind of make a point about the structure of the Police Review Board. And the mayor, at the end of my input, said he thought that it was off topic and discouraged me from doing that anymore. And I said, there's no public meetings of the Police Review Board. This is the only place I can do it. So then our second member came up, Philip, and when he started talking, the mayor cut him off after his first sentence, which I thought was very rude. But then he allowed Philip at least to give a little bit more of his testimony. But I think if you watch the whole thing, I'm going to put a link, a direct link to the chat to the whole thing. I'd be interested in your opinion and your feedback about it, because I really felt like we were staying completely on the topic of police oversight, and the mayor didn't seem to agree. So thank you very much for everything you do. Oh, and last thing, I've been trying to say PCCEP all these years, and if you ever look at the transcript and look at the different ways that the automatic transcript tries to figure out what you're saying when you're saying the word PCCEP, you'll see why it's better to say it as individual letters, because it comes out in all sorts of different ways. Thank you.
Thank you, Dan. Any other comments or questions or announcements? Okay, seeing none, I suppose we can go into the next slide.
Yes, we are ready to close it out. So I just want to thank our guests again this evening, and maybe briefly pass it back to Tia for any closing comments before we do our last slide here. And Odelia, I'm so sorry.
I'm sorry, I'm thinking about, the only other thing I could think of is really appreciating that Natasha and Leo for coming and presenting, and to have everyone who came tonight being here and spending their evening with us. I know I'm getting hungry, and we have a few more minutes that we can stay on, but can't think of anything else to add tonight, except to talk about what's coming up next.
Yeah, I just want to add to, I hope this conversation can continue, and like we can think of new ways to have these conversations. Yeah, thank you again.
Yeah, well said. Yeah, thank you again, Officers Hansberger and Sergeant Harris. We really appreciate your time, and to our PCCEP members and other community members who shared their experiences of these training opportunities. We really value your input and all of the conversation that it generated. And I'm with you, Odelia. I think that sounds like a great plan. So next week, we have our full committee meeting for the month, and that is going to be hybrid at the Portland building in our regular room. I want to say that's room 108 on the first floor, but we will be updating the website and all of the notices with that information. So hope to see you all there. And that's all we got. So with that, the time is 8:01 p.m. and this meeting is adjourned.